First and foremost, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wet Center webinar series. Every Friday morning, we aim to bring you interviews and presentations from key business and industry experts. We bring them here to provide insights which you can implement in the day-to-day of running your startup business. This week, we'll be covering the keys to rebuilding your pipeline in 90 days. We know that with the economic shock that came with COVID-19, many companies have experienced a drop-off in sales, whether that be in the form of leads going cold in the past few months. Many sales pipelines have run dry. Today, we have Dale Bierce of Sandler Training coaching us through how we can get back to rebuilding our sales efforts over the next 90 days. Dale Bierce has 30 years sales experience and over 12 years experience as a sales trainer. I've firsthand seen the level of quality and effect Dale can bring to a startup sales effort, and the results have spoken for themselves. It's my pleasure to introduce Dale. And Dale, if I missed anything on your bio, feel free to add or any other subject as well.
It's all good. It's all good. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning. So I guess housekeeping things first. I would, are you, Benjamin, you going to keep yours on or are you going to?
I can turn mine off.
I was going to say, if you go to camera, they'll have just me.
Yep.
Everybody just got me?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
A couple of things. You now have the ability, I believe, to unmute yourselves as you need to. This will be highly interactive. I'm not somebody who shows up with a PowerPoint and a couple of videos and talks for an hour. That's not my nature. So this will be highly interactive. Being honest, I don't prepare heavily for stuff like this. I need to react to what you're currently experiencing, and then we'll figure out where to go or what kind of content we're going to go into. I don't have a hard stop at 11. I've left myself a little bit of time. So if we go over, strictly up to you and your personal schedules, but if we go over and you have questions, I tend to pack as much as I can into the time I have with the group. So I will, by the end of this, hopefully give you enough that you'll have plenty of questions. First thing, let's start with what we're seeing out there, first of all, and just some of you can give me some feedback as to if this matches with your experience. March 19th, when the shelter-in-place order went into effect, and we all realized, hey, this is serious, and we're all going to, this is a new reality we're going to have to deal with. The response was pretty predictable. If you've done any reading on the, depending on which author you talk to, the 5 or 7 steps of grief and loss, the stages of loss that humans go through when they experience almost always starts with shock, denial, and anger. Those are typically the first 3 steps. After which there's experimentation and ending in adaptation and acceptance. But in the beginning, it's typically shock, disbelief, or denial and anger. And we saw a lot of that. And so for a period of time, prospecting wasn't appropriate. Selling, what I was telling people was 6 weeks ago was, this isn't the time to sell stuff. And that offended a lot of people because I'm a sales coach. And it isn't that we don't want to sell things. It is, now's not an appropriate time to sell. And now is the time to care first, sell second. Because everybody was still in shock and anger and trying to figure out what this meant for their world. We're past that. And in the last 3 weeks, there's been an emotional opening where people are starting, an opening up, where people are starting to realize this isn't, the end isn't necessarily coming, but we're going into a new phase. And we're recognizing that, 50 million US deaths and the risk for most of us is in its major form, okay? And we've all got to move forward. People are chomping at the bit. About 2 weeks ago, we started coaching most people, in some cases 3 or more, to start tentatively going out there. And most of you haven't heard the term behind the pendulum. I'll explain what that means. But as long as we approached with a very behind the pendulum posture, we could approach a conversation, pretty easily and keep people comfortable, even if they weren't prepared for us yet and didn't want to have any kind of a conversation yet. In the last couple of weeks, it's gotten better and better and better. Most people now are ready to go. And most of us are out prospecting and doing business again in some form, although I'm still going to suggest in some industries, you're going to stay a little behind the pendulum, and we'll talk about what that means. But relative to that cycle of shock, denial, anger and then moving on towards acceptance? Is everybody seeing that pattern? And is everybody feeling like in your business world, the market is maybe emotionally able to accept you now, and are you prepared to be out there selling? Is that a fair statement? Any feedback from anybody?
Yeah,
okay.
Guys, real quick, make sure to just unmute yourself during these sections if you want to respond.
Yes, I agree with that. This is Dan.
Okay, and Dan, as you talk now, are they when you call, are they guarded and defensive, or are they a little more open?
I'd say much more open. It's like what you said. People are willing to open the gate and get out there and let her buck.
It is. People are chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
So what I need from you now, then, okay, if that's where we're at, what are you experiencing on the selling side of your business that you? Let me ask the question this way. In the next 90 days, I could close more new accounts, open up more conversations that lead to opportunities, and move the sales ball downfield in my company if only I could what? What right now are you struggling with that's stopping you, slowing you down, or you're not sure how to do? What can I give you on this call that will help you? Anybody?
I think Brett here. I think one of the things is so many businesses just still aren't open. So the only thing I can do is call cell phones right now. To me, which is good, I can still do that. But you're still running the issue with people have their kids at home. They're just not. They're willing to talk and everything, but when's the right time and how do you do it? Still the call and to get on, but their businesses just aren't open yet.
Understood. Here's my perception of that, Brett. Now, I want your feedback on this. What we're seeing is that people are actually, a lot of people will say to me, well, nobody's accessible because they're at home. And what we've experienced is they're actually more accessible. They're scared of missing any opportunity for their business or missing any communication from their customers. And even leadership, senior leadership, in fact, in most cases, senior leadership are the ones that are accessible. Their office phone is transferred to their cell and they're in front of it all day. So even though they are in their living room with their kids or at their kitchen table, the vast majority of serious business people are doing business. And they are accessible, but like you say, they're distracted and they're also positioning themselves as, hey, we're not doing much yet. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but we can still get a hold of them. So what I'm hearing is, Brett, is a part of what you want to talk about or want some language on is how do I approach them?
Correct.
Okay. How many others, either raise your hand or unmute yourself, how many of us without coming across as a salesperson or coming across as too pushy or offending someone because, what are you doing calling me? We're not even back to work yet. What are your thoughts?
Is done right. I'm actually getting more people unsolicited approaching me now to find out what my prices are and how to get involved. So I've got a list of about 6 or 8 people that have contacted me in the last 2 weeks, and I've also brought on 3 new clients since this started that contacted me. I don't understand what's going on. I'm doing better now than I was before, but I want to do a follow-up. A really good follow-up on the people that are contacting me and not treat it like, oh, well, they know I'm a good dancer. This is a lock. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so help me understand, Don. What you want some help with is when I follow up with them, how to approach that call.
Yeah, it's just so out of the box for me. I usually go and meet somebody. I took one of your courses before there. And you told me always tell them you're going to be your friend. Anyway, it helps so much. So I just approach people the one time just to get to know them. Then I go from there. Here they're coming to me. I don't know.
Okay.
See, I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Dale,
Go.
This is Mark Dodd talking. We're having at Biofilter, we're having the same issue that Dale's having. We're having unsolicited emails and people hitting our website asking for services. What we're finding is right now a lot of mid-managers have time available to actually research projects that they've been wanting to do for a while, but they haven't. My question is, okay, we're getting the phone calls from them. We're getting the initial data, back and forth communications. But sooner or later, when we're allowed to actually go out and start, interfacing at businesses again, how do we make that transition smooth? Because a lot of these, like Dale is, we're talking to people we've never met in person.
Understood. Now, I guess a couple things, Mark. Let's focus first on the immediate. Calling you, first of all, you're seeing what we're seeing everywhere. Mid-level managers have time to work on things, and a lot of people are getting approached, myself included. I'm actually getting more incoming calls than I ever have. But are you engaging them in Zoom calls, video calls, or just staying on the phone?
No, we're trying to do more Zoom calls, so it's more of an interface.
Okay.
Our problem is some of the dairies and some of the people we deal with, they don't have the bandwidth to really handle a video call.
Gotcha. Okay, and even when they get on their phone, they can't do it on their phone.
No.
Okay, in that case, my encouragement would be always get them on a Zoom call, because people, or from this pandemic, society's changing and people are becoming more and more comfortable. Zoom has fixed their security issues. It is becoming the de facto standard. There are other platforms you can use. Doesn't matter, pick one, but get very, very fluid and comfortable with the controls, the buttons, how to use the thing, and use video conferencing as much as you can. Get used to it, get comfortable with it. You can, if everybody's familiar with how to do a virtual background behind you on a Zoom call and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
We could put together a link on that if
No,
necessary.
I'm not.
Okay.
Dan, we'll send something out on how to do that. And then I know you've had your hand up, Dan, so feel free to jump in.
No, I put my hand up when we were voting, so I'll take it down.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you guys as a group can forward some information to everybody here, just so that they have, instead of spending time on here, it's very easy and free to download virtual backgrounds that you can have behind you that make you look a lot more professional if you don't have a place in your home set up for that. Highly recommend do as many Zoom as you can. Let's conceptually talk about, but I want to get some input for some others here. I see a number of probably 8 or 10 people here who haven't any input. I think what I should focus on is conceptually approaching people on the phone or in person that you haven't met, to gauge to what degree they are open to a conversation now. And if they are, begin a conversation. And if they're not, leave them in an emotionally okay place where they're going to be very open to seeing you again or hearing from you again in the future, dating them. Does that make sense as a topic for today?
I think that's right, Dale.
It does for me. I'm not sure about everybody else, but that transition to me has got me a little nervous.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Thanks.
Yeah, I like the idea as well.
All right. What I'm gonna give you here is concepts, but they are the things that we would train our clients. So I got to give you a couple of just concepts, and then I'll talk through what does that sound like, or how would that show up. And then what I'm going to want you to do is have you give me a couple of scenarios, and I will role play. If I were you, you play the prospect, and I'll role play how I would approach that phone call or the face-to-face meeting. All right. So conceptually, let me do a couple things. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. I see. Grace, are you monitoring the chat box so that I don't need to?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I can ignore all that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, let me give you. Can everybody see the whiteboard?
Yes.
You can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
I am going to kill my video for just a second because I'm going to I'm working off of a Surface Pro on my stand-up desk, and that's why the camera's down so low instead of up here where it should be. By the way, little etiquette things. If you're Zooming, you really should have the camera up at this level, not down where I have it today. If at all possible, make it so that it looks like you're two people looking at each other standing up. It's just simply a more professional camera angle. I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to lay the thing down and draw a couple things. Conceptually, come on. There we go. Okay. This is a concept called pendulum theory, and I will want somebody's input on this. I need somebody to chime in and tell me what you think. If this is positive, yes. This is negative, no. Sorry, I scribble. Positive, yes. Negative, no. And this is neutral. If I am a prospect, now, first of all, let's get comfortable with a couple of concepts. Anybody here, now that I think about it, let me set the stage for this. I think I have enough time for this. Okay, I'll go back into that in a second. Does everybody have me on your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So conceptually, let's get comfortable with a couple of concepts. Anybody here? Anybody here? Let's see. When you walk on a car lot, salesperson walks up and says, "Can I help you?" 98.5% of us, by every study done, we all use the same words. We all say the same thing. What do you say?
No, thank you.
I'm just looking.
There we go. There's the words. Every study ever done, we all put a hand up and say, "Just looking." We do it at furniture stores. We do it at car lots. Any place where we feel challenged by a salesperson or the fact that we're going to have to interact with a salesperson. Anybody here walk on a car lot? Now, 15 of us, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 of you say, "I just like cars," right? But in general, do you walk on a car lot if you're not going to buy a car in the next few days or week or whatever?
Oh, generally, I'm serious.
Correct. Statistically speaking, 90+% of us don't walk on a car lot unless we are in the market for a car. And yet, when asked, we say, "Just looking." Have you ever been on a phone call as a salesperson in a sales role? Have you been on a sales call when the prospect says something to you like, "Hey, Dale, I like the sound of that. That sounds like a product we might have an interest in. Do you have some literature or something you can send me over so I can do a little more reading on that?" And you know doggone well, you're going to spend $5 on postage and $6 on big glossy brochures and your literature and stuff, and it's going where?
Into the can.
In the garbage. And you know it on the phone, correct?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, that is an example. All that was I'm a nice person, you're a nice person, but I'm going to get you off my phone, and you're never going to talk to me again. You're going to get a lifetime subscription to my voicemail jail. Both of those are examples of what is the buyer's first step. When we approach a prospect, they're going to mislead us a couple of interest. They're either going to understate, "Just looking." "No, dude, I'm going to buy a car in the next 72 hours, but I'm not telling you because you are a lying, greedy, sleazy, commission-driven salesperson who will take advantage of me for your benefit." That's what we perceive of salespeople. We were all trained that a salesperson, if we were, I always say there was a game show when I was a kid called Password, and we'd have a word, and we're going to give clues to get you to guess the word. And I always ask people, if you take 50 people off the street who have never been in sales, and the word you want them to guess is salesperson, what are the clues? And we hear things like sleazy, greedy, commission-driven, pushy, liar. Those are the type of descriptors that people use to describe a salesperson. And we've got to be comfortable that when you're showing up with a prospect, that's what you're perceived as, even if they like you. And anybody who's ever done business with a family member and sold products to a family member, the dynamic still applies, because I know that when I buy, you get paid, and therefore I'm going to is your finances. Comfortable that that's how we are perceived, whether we like it or not. They're either going to understate or they're going to overstate. "Hey, I like the sound of that. Send me some literature." And all that happened is, I'm a nice person, you're a nice person, I'm going to get you off the phone. Is that, first of all, is everybody comfortable with that idea that that's how all selling conversations are going to start, or one way or the other?
Yeah. I'm not comfortable with it, but I understand it.
Okay. All right. That's okay. As long as we are, cognizant and aware of it, we've got to approach a certain way. So the other thing is, salespeople have all been trained to be positive and enthusiastic and convince people to buy our product. And they're well aware of that. The second step of the buyer system is to take our knowledge and our information. They want us to dump everything we know about our product or service, because how can I not be taken advantage of by you you lying, greedy, sleazy salesperson, if I don't first go over to this other lying, greedy, sleazy salesperson and get them to give me all of their knowledge, their information, and probably their pricing. People shop. That's how we buy. Whether we like it or not, we do it ourselves. We mislead about interest, and most than we really have, because I need you to give me all your knowledge. And right there is where the salesperson hands over control of the dance, because we go ahead, they seem to have an interest, so we go into pitch mode, presentation mode, give them all of our features and benefits and all the great things about what we do, and even a specific solution in a lot of cases. And then they simply mislead us about interest again, tell us they got to think about it, they got to run a flagpole, they got to do this, they got to do that, and put us into follow-up mode, and they go hide. That's pretty much how the dance goes. So recognizing that, we have to change the pattern at the beginning of the conversation to start a different dialogue right up front. So let me go back. So when a prospect and a salesperson are together, phone, face, doesn't matter, they are always somewhere on the pendulum. And this pendulum is swinging back and forth. I like them, I'm going to buy from them. I don't like them, I'm not going to buy. Really know where they are. But in general terms, here's a fundamental concept. Sandler would call this pendulum theory, and it's counterintuitive and it's hard to get used to. In general terms, if a prospect says to you as a salesperson, hey, and I'll pick somebody, hey, Dan, why should I buy from you guys? I'm neutral. Now, they may not say this, but I'm not positive towards you. I'm not negative towards you. I'm looking at 3 different companies. Why should I buy from you? What is that prospect expecting you to do? Anybody?
Drop the price.
Okay, something that comes before that.
Share everything you know.
If I say to you, why should I buy from your company? Now, I'm not positive or negative. Why should I buy from you? What am I expecting you to do?
Go into your benefits.
Give me a pitch.
There you
Convince.
go.
Feature bomb you.
You are expecting me to get over here and be positive and enthusiastic and convince you to buy. Why should you buy from us? We've been in business since 1963. We have the best engineering staff, the best reputation, the best products, blah, 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 blah. They're expecting, and that's what they want. What I need you to do, that's what traditional salespeople are going to do. What I would need you to do, and this ties into how we're going to approach this conversation when we start calling these people. I need you to be what we would call slightly, not way over here, but slightly behind the pendulum. If he's neutral and you say to me, Dale, why should I buy from your company? My answer is going to be something like, hey, Dan, I don't know that you should or shouldn't buy from our company. We're all for good at what we do. Love to have you as a customer, but we're not the right fit for everybody. I thought that's what you and I were going to discuss today. Thoughts?
Creates intrigue. You're not pushy, but you are going with the momentum.
Correct. What I need you to, the mindset that I would be coaching you to adapt. Traditional salespeople stay over here, and it's always positive enthusiasm, convince you to buy, keep pitching. I need you to be curious and skeptical. By that, I mean, I need you to be slightly more skeptical about the potential to do business than they appear to be. An example would be prospects. Hey, Dale, based on what Bob told me about your company, man, I can't wait to see what you guys can do for us. Traditional salesperson is going to say, great, press real hard, 3rd copy's yours, let's get going, right? They're going to assume the sale, positive, enthusiastic. And what I'm going to suggest is they're lying. They have to. They've got to protect themselves from me. They want me to dump all of my knowledge and do a bunch of what we would call unpaid consulting. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Dave, I appreciate it. I hope that you become a client. I hope you're a client for life, and we do great things for your company. But you and I haven't met, and our companies really haven't done business before. What makes either one of us so confident that we'll do as good a job for you as we did for Bob's company? Should we take a few minutes and camp out there and investigate that first? I still want to do business, but let's take a cautious approach here. Prospect says, well, Dale, based on my last experience with your company, why would I ever do business with you? Average salesperson is going to say, we've changed. We fired that whole crew. We rebuilt the whole company. We've done this, we've done that. And I'm going to suggest that's not going to work. The more we try and take them this way, they are going this way. That's human nature. I'm going to say, well, Bob, if that was your experience, I probably wouldn't if I were you. In fact, I'm surprised you let me in here. You want me to leave? I appreciate you taking time to meet with me. And by the way, I wasn't here then. Would you mind sharing with me what happened? We must have really screwed up. Tell me the story. And by the way, these people are great prospects. They got no place to go. They can't be any more negative. All we got to do is camp out and be patient and have a conversation. We all flop back and forth between companies. Thoughts or feedback on this concept? Anybody?
It sounds like you're trying to be an ally with them because you're actually listening to their concerns.
There you go. What I'm going to suggest is, what I tell salespeople is quit trying to sell stuff and facilitate helping people buy stuff. And if you do that, you'll be the right answer enough of the time to be very profitable, right? The prospect should be driving the process. I always want to be slightly more skeptical than they are and asking a lot of questions, okay? Does this make sense? Okay. All right, now so that concept of just being, you got to be very, very careful. When you first start doing this, it's very easy to be too far behind the pendulum. I was very guilty of this. When I first learned it 15 years ago, I had been a straight commission salesperson for like 20 plus years, 25 years. And that positive enthusiasm was all I knew. And when I learned it, I take things so literally by nature, I became very negative. And I had people say things to me like, do you even want my business? You know, and it's that, you know, you're too far when you're doing that. You can't be negative. It is just a little bit more skeptical than they are. And I mean, just a little bit. It's always questioning. Well, why would that make sense? Right? Help me understand where that fits, right? As opposed to trying to push it forward. When they start realizing that you're not trying to push it towards a sale, but you're comfortable helping them get there, they will lead the process and the whole conversation will become much more open. You'll see people relax. The second concept I want to give you is the idea that we have to change the way the conversation starts. When I walk in, if walk into Dick's office as a prospect, I called him up. He said, yeah, I'll meet with you. We meet together, whether it's Zoom or phone or face-to-face, but we've agreed to have a conversation. I show up in that conversation as a salesperson. Dick knows he's a prospect. What is he expecting my role is? If I call him up, he agrees to meet with me. He knows I'm a salesperson. When that meeting happens, what is Dick's expectation of what I'm going to do? What am I there for?
Push your product.
Here's the language I would use: to convince him to buy. Is that fair?
Yes.
And his role is what?
To create the order.
Try again.
To protect himself from getting taken.
There we go. His job is to defend, is the language I would use. I love your word of protect, or resist, defend, protect. That's his job. He believes my job is there to attack and his job is to defend. And that is simply an ineffective model, but it's the way traditional selling works. By you begin to change that, but there's something else we can do. So let me give you a concept Sandler would call upfront contract. And that is the idea that when every interaction between a salesperson and a prospect begins, cold call, arranged meeting, follow-up meeting, doesn't matter. Every one of them, every interaction should start with what we would call an upfront contract. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on this. And if this is all we get done, if you do these two things, you will see a difference in how people respond to you and how far the conversations go and how open they are to you. So the concept here is this. Share. Now I'm going to give it to you in literal form. Don't take this too literal, because when people first learn this concept, they go out there and they try to do a full upfront contract in every single interaction. And there's times when you don't. I'm going to give you 5 elements of an upfront contract. There are times when I only use 2 or 3. For instance, in a cold call, I'm not going to do 5, 3, because that's all we need. Human beings are much more comfortable, less defensive when they know what's coming. And when you walk into a sales call, prospect and Salesforce, that prospect thinks they know what's coming, and they mentally put us in the box of pitching, convincing salesperson. And we got to get out of that box. We have to, at the beginning of a meeting, we have to change their perception of what our agenda is, so that we can have a real open dialogue. Right? So the concept is this: there are 5 steps to an upfront contract: time, purpose, their agenda, my agenda. Sorry if I scribble, and I'm doing this sideways. And this is the key one: possible outcomes. We're going to, in most selling situations, the prospect enters the meeting believing and have us in a box. You're a lying, convincing salesperson that's here to convince me. My job is to defend. I want to change that at the beginning of every interaction by doing something. Dan is my prospect. And Dan, I called Dan up. We had a nice conversation. He said, yeah, come on out. I'll meet with you. I'm always looking at other options. I walk out, I meet with Dan. I walk into his office. He believes I'm there to convince. He believes he's there to defend. I'm going to role play this. Now, be very careful here. If you're hearing this for the first time, some of you are going to freak out. Some of you are going to go, no, they won't listen to that. It's too long. And there's a little piece of truth to that, although not much. But what I would say is once you learn to do this, get comfortable with it, it gets woven into the first few moments of conversation, and it doesn't sound like what you're about to hear, but I have to teach it linear form. So I got to do it all at once. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to role play this. And Dan, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and I'm going to ask you to play my prospect. And you are a production manager at a manufacturing plant. I sell a product that you would use technically in your manufacturing process. You've agreed to meet with me, and we are entering the meeting for the first time. And what I'd like the rest of you to do is listen to this, and I need you to push back on that. Too long, it's too wordy. Ignore all that and just ask yourself, if a salesperson showed up and started the meeting this way, and you were the prospect, how would you feel? Okay, and Dan, I'm going to ask you when we're done with this, how do you feel about the interaction between us that's about to happen? Because this is the beginning of a meeting. Dan, are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want you to do, you can play hardball if you want, and I can handle anything you can throw at me. My advice is play along with me, right?
Okay.
Okay. We haven't met for the first time, so I'm just going to jump in. So I've walked into your office. We shake hands, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Dan, listen, appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. We didn't talk on the phone about how long this was going to take, but normally a first meeting for me is somewhere in a half hour to 45-minute range. As long as we don't go over 45 minutes time-wise, are you okay?
That works.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we may not take anywhere near that long. If we find out we're not a good fit, we could be done in 20 minutes, but I'll make sure we don't go over 45 unless you've got serious questions and want to continue. I also would like to make sure that we both leave this meeting feeling like it was a good use of our time. And I do better with an agenda. So I'd like to just briefly make sure that we're both on the same page about what we're going to.
Sounds good.
Okay. To me, this is not so much of a selling meeting. You know, I'm a salesperson for XYZ die company. I know you guys use a similar product to ours, probably one of our competitors in your manufacturing process. But to me, the purpose of us getting together today really is for you to learn enough about my company, for me to learn enough about you and your company, for us to decide together whether we should even continue the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
That. Towards that end, I'm probably, I have to guess, we've never met before. You're probably going to have some questions for me. Normally when I meet with somebody like yourself, you're probably going to want to know things like, what are our products like, our manufacturing process, our delivery process, our prices, our warranty, our back-end service. You're probably going to want to know some of those things. Am I correct?
Yeah, definitely. But that's getting ahead of ourselves there.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure we cover all of those. Is there anything else in this meeting that you want to make sure we cover?
Well, I definitely want to know the price and payment methods.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we cover that. Anything else you can think of?
Well, I want to warranties too,
Okay.
and how reliable your equipment is.
No worries. We'll take a look at all that. To cover some of that material, Dan, I'm probably going to need to ask some fairly probing questions myself. Typically, I'd like to ask some questions about, your company's buying history relative to our type of a product, good experiences you've had, bad experiences you had, pet peeves, things like that. Going to be okay if I ask some fairly probing questions?
Yeah, I'll let you know if I can't answer it.
There you go. That's all I would ask. If I probe too deep, you kick me under the table or something, I'll back off. No big deal. We okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the last thing I just want us to be both comfortable with, Dan, I don't know if this will happen, but I want to make sure that if at the end of this, there could be 100 different reasons why exactly what we're good at and what your company may or may not even need right now. There could be a lot of reasons why there's just not a good fit at this particular time. There's no reason to move forward or to pursue any business opportunities. And if that's the case, I'd like us both to be comfortable say, if we get to that you guys may not be the right fit for us. So
yeah, I believe in win-win or no deal, so that works.
Love it. Appreciate that. That'll save us both a lot of time. If we're honest with each other, if there's no reason for us to continue, we'll say so. And now, by the same token, I'm a salesperson. I hope we bring some value that you haven't seen before. And if that happens, could we then take the last few minutes of this meeting and figure out what would the next steps look like to see if we could do business together? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love next steps rather than leaving it hanging.
That makes sense. Okay, I'll stop right there. Now, long, yes, I'm teaching it. Would it really show up that way in front of the prospect? No. But will we cover all those things in the first few minutes of conversation? Yes. My question is, Dan came into this meeting believing I was there to convince. He was there to defend. Dan, how do you feel now?
I feel like you're opening a potential relationship that even if I say no, like you said earlier, you might be my friend.
Do you feel comfortable in this environment being open and authentic and sharing with me, knowing that we have the right to say no?
You're listening
Before
to
I
me, so
move
that's
on,
important.
does anybody else have any you just heard?
I usually ask them what the problem is, why they call me. I usually, even if I make a phone call, my phone call, I don't do much of a phone call. I just send email, mass email, or I have somebody send mass email, and then I get a call back. And my first question is more or less, how can I help? What did you call me? What's the problem? So I think, I leave it there and then I try to help. So I don't know if that is the right way or wrong way.
Okay, so here's what I would say, Ahmad. That fits after this. Assuming, let's see, every interaction, I'm going to say, would start with some form of this. Even if they called me, before I get into how can I help, it would be normally when someone, hey, Ahmad, I appreciate the phone call today. I hope that we're able to help you in some way or answer your questions. Typically, a first conversation like this takes about 15 minutes, and by the end of that, we'll figure out whether we need to talk further or not. And I'll try and answer all your questions. Do you have time for that right now? I'm going to do some version of that. I'm going to get an agreement always on how long are we going to talk and what do the possible outcomes look like.
And rather, typically people jump in very quickly and they say, I got this XYZ and I want to do WY, whatever. You're saying I need to back off.
Personally, if you called me and said, hey, I have this, how can I help you? Well, we got this and we're thinking about doing this. I'm going to stop and do something like, sounds like something we would love to be a part of that conversation. Do you have maybe 10 or 15 minutes for us to talk that through right now? Or if this becomes a longer conversation, should we schedule something to make sure that we both have time to get our questions answered?
Okay.
I'm always going to back that down, get an agreement on what we're about to go through. And here's why. Before I do that, any other feedback before I go further?
This is interesting in the sense that I'm an engineer by training and I love solving problems. So I don't have any problem jumping in and answering the question. What you're saying is interesting.
Don't jump in in and answer the question is my advice. And here's why. Here's why. Let's go back. When I walked into this meeting, Dan thought I was there to defend. He's operating from a historical, traditional model, the way it's always worked. Here's what happens. Most salespeople spend their life in what I would call a subservient relationship. The buyer is allowed to perceive themselves as up here in some invisible hierarchy of power. And the salesperson is perceived as down here is in that invisible hierarchy of power. And the salesperson, A, doesn't know what to do about it, so they stay there, or B, believes it's okay because, you know, you're the buyer, you're up here. And what I'm going to argue as a coach is no. All selling interactions should be a what we would call equal business stature. It is all selling conversations should be a peer-to-peer conversation between two people of equal business stature to decide together, should we do business together or not? Why or why not? Either one is okay. And the way we accomplish that, Ahmad, to answer your question, if I followed along the way we're going, that prospect believes I'm the buyer, I'm in control. What Upfront Contract does, the dynamics that just changed between Dan and I, when I walked in, he thought I was there to convince, he was there to defend. And when I to peer, and the way I did that was by saying, hey, look, by the end of this, I want to be comfortable that we may not do business together, and that's okay. Maybe we do, maybe we move forward, maybe there's some next steps, but it's okay if we say no. And when I do that, I take away their power. The way a buyer keeps us in this position is they dangle it over us, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes very overtly, but it is, I might give you my business. I might give you my business. And the salespeople were taught to jump like a puppy dog to get that business. And what I'm going to suggest is that's not what business people do. It is, we may not even accept your business.
Yeah, my attitude from the old days is a little bit of a, shall I say, hard ass. I don't jump up and down, and I show it. And I like what you say about the pendulum. I usually, when I get a call and they say, we got this problem, I usually say we are expensive right off the bat, and it may not fit. And I tell you right off the bat, if you're looking for an XYZ dollar, just go call so-and-so. But again, it's me. I'm trying to figure out, maybe, I don't know if and don't solve the problem, don't give free consultant, which I don't have a problem with because I learn also from their problem and I learn about their process.
Yes.
But you're saying don't do that. Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the question or what don't do that means, but essentially what I'm saying is, yes, if they called you up and asked you a question right off the bat, that to answer it would be providing a solution. Right. Yeah, the answer is no, I'm not answering that. I have to understand first. Let's pretend I did. What would happen, right? That's a lot of unpaid consulting and free giveaway of information. And once they get that information, they don't need you anymore.
Understand.
So I need to understand. Yeah, so this is an agreement on a process, and prospects love it because they know when you do an upfront contract, you will see people uncross their arms, uncross their legs, sit back in the chair and relax and have a much more open dialogue because they recognize this is two people having an adult to adult conversation to decide positive or negative. Either one's okay. We either move or we don't. And if we do, we'll be very clear about what the steps are. And they feel empowered and they feel safe. But what they don't realize is that we have become peer-to-peer, that I have rights too. Thoughts on that? I'm only getting feedback from 2 or 3 people. There's 15 people here. Somebody, please. What are you hearing?
Dale, this is Mark. One of the issues we have at Biofilter is we were founded by engineers, and a lot of times they try to go in and see a problem, and it's not the problem that the customer is trying to get us to focus on. You know, they're trying to solve everything, not just the one. They're not listening to exactly what the customer is saying. And there's a couple of times I've had to step in there and say, okay, let me talk to the customer and work with the customer to find out what their needs are. Because they'll see something, oh, they could do this better this way, this way, this way. And then the project just gets too big and too out of hand. So a lot of times that's where engineering and sales interface don't really work real well.
You started this with one of the issues we're having is founded by engineers. I'll agree with that issue.
Yeah.
My answer is train the engineers.
Mhm.
Engineers by anyone, and I spend a lot of time training technical people how to listen, ask questions, and understand what's really going on before you give anything.
Right.
Did you have a question in there that I can answer?
No, I was just making a comment. What Ahmad was having the same issue is you're jumping in as the engineer, not as the salesperson first.
So as fundamental rule, 70-30, the prospect should be talking 70% of the time, and we should be talking 30% of the time.
Yeah.
That means we have to ask very effective questions and shut up.
Yes, this is Dick. I'm one of those engineers trying to learn about selling. So I appreciate this very much.
Hope you find something in here that's helpful for you.
Already have.
Good. Does this idea of getting an agreement up front and making it clear that we're well aware that we may not do business and we're okay with that is a way of helping them be more open and not seeing this as a pitch and defend type model? Does that whole thing make sense to you?
Dale, I've got a quick comment if possible.
Yeah.
Every call, if I'm calling anyone, and when I get that prospect on the phone, we may have a conversation, but the first thing is hey, did I catch you at a bad time? For me, that's a great way to level the playing field. Because if he's got the time, I have the green light, he's interested. If it's a bad time, I can at least ask for a follow-up time, a better time that I could call him back. So that phone call wasn't a negative. I've got another time to call back. And for me, it just works well of just leveling the playing field.
And is it fair to say that's something that you learned from our time together a while back?
Yes, and I've carried it ever since.
Glad to hear you found value in it. What I want everybody else to see is that piece that you just mentioned right there. If I approach it this way, and if I stay a little behind the pendulum, and I approach every conversation in my own language of some version of making it clear that I'm okay if it doesn't go anywhere, we just tell me no, which takes away their power. If let's pretend I call up and I say, hey, Jeff's catching a bad time. You got to yes, fine, I'll take a minute. Conversation, and I do an upfront contract. Let me change that. Let's go back to my meeting with Dan. At the end of that meeting, we find out, Dan is not only happy with his current provider, he's thrilled with them. They go above and beyond, and there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to get him interested in my product at this moment, which does happen. I won't go into the details of that, but does happen. If that's the case, all
Tell him, do you think he might be going a little wrong or sideways or whatever?
When we started, who was this? I think it was Mark. I don't remember now. I can't see all the names that asked about, okay, we're going out there to start making calls like this. We've got enough time. We got very little time left, but using those two concepts, does that help you formulate language to start a call now when you go out prospecting?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Agree.
Okay.
If you have time before this is over, could you touch on qualifying the decision makers a little bit?
Yes.
If you have time.
If we have time, but let's stick on this for a moment, because if somebody out there is struggling with, okay, what would that sound like? When I pick up the phone and call somebody, what would that sound like? Anybody need some help on that or want to talk about that? You got one you want to role play with me?
Dale, just a suggestion, but comment here. if someone's picking up the phone and stating that, hey, we're still recovering, we're still not open for business yet, we're still figuring out what to do. Maybe they've opened up business, but they're not considering any purchase decision. How do you engage that conversation? Do you begin the sales process with them there? Do you start kind of qualifying a bit, or you just say, hey, we'll set a date and I'll follow up, down the ride? Like, how would you handle that?
Well, first of all, I would change the way I would approach the conversation in a way that will bring that out very, very quickly. In my upfront contract, which I'm going to do as soon as they pick up the phone, I'll do a role play of one. But I want to differentiate something you said there. Selling and prospecting are two different things. The purpose of prospecting is to invite someone in to a selling conversation, which means schedule a meeting. You can do it right there on the spot if they want to talk right then, and then you transition into selling at that point. But selling begins when the prospect, who knows what you do and what you sell, has agreed to enter into a conversation about that product or service to decide if they have an interest or not. Now we're prospecting. So when we're making these calls, we are prospecting. No qualifying needed, no nothing, until they've agreed to enter into a conversation. If I called you up, I'm trying to pick a product. Somebody give me an example of a product.
Can we just use the technical product for the manufacturing?
Yeah, let's just say, I'm calling Dan. They manufacture food in shaped forms. I sell the dies that fit in his machines. And he's using somebody else, I think. If I were to call Dan, it would sound something like this. First of all, I'm going to do some kind of a little, if he's never talked to me before, I don't want to overload you with stuff here, but I'm going to do a little bit of a what I would call pattern interrupt. Somebody, Dan, you with me? Can you role play?
Sure.
Okay. Just play along. This won't take much input from you. But if I called you up, it would sound something like this, assuming you're a complete stranger.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up the phone, and when I say ring, ring, you pick up the phone and say, this is Dan. Hang on. Okay, ring, ring.
Hello, Dan here.
Dan, good morning. This is Dale Bierce. That name is probably not at all familiar, is it?
No. I had a cousin named Dale once.
All right, hope he was a good one.
Yeah.
Listen, I was afraid that might be the case. How about if I take half a minute and I'll just explain who I am and why I'm calling? And if there's no value in us having a further conversation, we'll both just get off the phone. Can I have half a minute to introduce myself?
Sure.
Listen, I appreciate that. This might be very brief. This might be very premature. My name's Dale. I'm with a company called XYZ Die Company. We sell the kind of dies that companies like yours would use in your machines for your food products. You're probably using one of my competitors. But at this time, coming out of COVID, you guys may not even be back to work yet. You may not be at full production. You might not even be talking to somebody in my position right now, and I don't want to offend you. But I thought I'd at least make the call and see, if you're open to a conversation at this time about alternate providers. And if not, then maybe we could agree to talk in the future. Is this too premature for me to be approaching you?
No, actually, I'd like to look at alternatives for some of our dies because we've been having problems with one of them.
And approach makes sense. I'm telling them right up front, I recognize you guys might not even be prepared. This might be premature and might not be time to be approaching you. Does this sound like a conversation we can have?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. Okay. No, it sounds good. I like that approach myself.
And then if he says, well, I said, no, I'm open to taking the call, but we're not doing anything right now. We're at a blah, blah, blah. Let's pretend he goes negative and says, no, I'm open to talking to you, but you're right. We're like 25% production. We won't be back to full for quite a while. I got plenty of stuff in stock. I'm not expecting to look at other providers for a while. No worries. I kind of expected that, and I appreciate you being willing to take the call. Would it make sense for us sometime in the next couple of days or week, or maybe you have time today, that we could take maybe 15 minutes and just get acquainted, so that just for future preparation, if there ever comes a time when it might be more valuable for us to talk? Are you open to a brief conversation?
Yeah, that sounds good.
He says, I got time right now. Let's go ahead and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Now selling begins. Right now we're going to have a little different conversation. And I'm going to ask lots of questions. We're going to try and find out, what his current state of business is relative to my type of product. But up until that, he's given lots of option to say, not time yet. And I'm acknowledging right up front, you guys may not even be ready for this yet. I don't want to offend you. Is this too early to be calling you? Some version of that. You can find your own language for it. Now, somebody give me some feedback on what you're hearing.
I understand what you're saying, but as an engineer, I'm going to find it very difficult actually putting it into practice into words.
Yes, you will. My clients who I work with, this is all new. It is 180 degrees from traditional selling. It is counterintuitive, and it will take you months to learn. And what happens is you have a few wins the old way, and you say, I'll just keep doing it this way. My encouragement would be practice, practice, practice. Keep working towards it. And what you'll find is it gets easier and more natural, easier and more natural to stay behind the pendulum, get a good solid upfront agreement on what's about to happen, and be open about the idea that we may not do business, because that creates equal business stature conversations. But you're right. Give yourself time to rewire and to approach things a different way.
Hey, Dale, this is Brett here. One quick question. So on your initial conversation, that initial, couple of words that you're talking. So you're talking about time. Hey, do you have a quick second? I really liked your example that you used on, hey, my name is Dale. I've probably never heard my name. So are you trying to get in with the initial call to get them 30 seconds for you to give just who you are, and then try and get another time so that when they can talk?
Here's what happens, Brett. If I call you up and I don't do what I did was a mini upfront contract. The upfront contract was purpose, the time, purpose, and outcomes. That's 3. It is, how about if I take half a minute, time, purpose, I'll explain who I am and why I'm interrupting your day, purpose, and outcomes. If there's no value in us continuing the conversation, we'll just get off the phone. That allows you permission to say no, makes you feel safe, and describes what's likely going to happen. That gives me, and I'm doing my coaching on what you just gave me. Do you have a few seconds? Too vague. I ask him for half a minute, because in 30 seconds, I'm going to do what we would call a 30-second commercial about our company, and then he's going to decide, should we continue talking or not?
But you're not doing the selling at that time. You're just explaining who you are and what the purpose is, right?
Yes. And we're going to do it from a pain perspective, not a feature and benefit perspective. Let's pretend that I was talking to Dan and it's dyes. I'm just going to make this up because I don't sell dyes. But if it were Dan, he said, yeah, I'll take half a minute. What I did there was a modified version because of COVID, right? But if we weren't in COVID, I'd stay away. I didn't need to do the whole, is this too premature? You guys may not be back to work.
Yeah.
Even if I did, I could do that. But somewhere in there, I'm going to do, instead of we are this company and we're awesome at this and this and this, can I share with you how we can do this? That is traditional and more convincing, more pitchy. I would say something like, my name's Dale Bierce with XYZ Dye Company, leaders in food manufacturing in the western half of the country. People often call us when they're frustrated because the dyes are jamming in the machine periodically, which requires a complete shutdown and cleaning of the line. Or in some cases, the dyes aren't lasting as long as they should and their budget's all out of whack. And in other cases, they're working with a provider that simply doesn't stay in contact, doesn't know their business, and is clunky to work with. And you and I don't know each other. Are any of those things you've ever experienced? So we're going to show up and say, we solve this problem, this problem, this problem. You got anything that sounds like that? I know.
So you're doing a semi pitch, but not a full pitch at all.
I'm saying, here's who we are. Here's kind of the problems we solve.
Yeah.
Any of that worth a conversation?
Got it.
Yep. And at the end of that, within the time frame we've agreed to, we either agree to have further conversation or we don't. And if he says that sounds like, yeah, actually we've had some problem with that, I'd be willing to talk to you. And then I'm gonna say, is this a bad time? Should we schedule something? Or you want to take 15 or 20 minutes now? And then the selling begins. Up until then, we're prospecting. Now we are at, but has anybody taken something away from this that you can use? If nothing else, mindset.
I think it's been very beneficial. Thank you. Just on getting the purpose. I like just the getting an agreement right out the door, even just to talk for 30 seconds is just already starts everything going your way.
Well, and it creates mutual agreement. Right now, we both know why we're here and what's going to happen, and you're going to find people like it. It makes us first of all, it creates this, but it also reduces their anxiety and concern about what you're trying to accomplish. They feel like
that. I gotta say this: I have dealt with people with huge egos. They don't like it when they get pushed back. When they realize it's a level playing field and I'm not going to jump up and down like a puppy because they want to dangle that thing in front of me, they get, really pissed off. I've had people in the trade shows in my own booth who...
I'm glad you said that, Ahmad.
They get really pissed off.
Yeah, let me comment on that. I'm glad you said that, because what you school hard ass.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to suggest to you is that's why they respond that way. If we had done it my way, they'd love it. They'd love it because I'm not telling them, I'm asking them. And that's the difference. Telling is not selling. Telling is not selling. Selling is asking questions.
No, what I was saying is I ask questions, how can I help you? And then they would say something like this, and I say, the price is too high and we won't drop it. Or something in that line. But you're saying make the playing field level. That's what I'm referring to, that comment. I'm trying to figure out how do I work it in. And I have ran to people who get really pissed off when they realize they don't have the power that they think they have. I don't know if it makes sense.
If that's true, Ahmad, we'd have to talk offline about that, because I need to hear the specifics. If someone's getting mad because you're depowering them, it's how it was done. It was the language used and the approach taken.
Okay.
And the other thing I would say is there are buyers out there that demand that the way I buy stuff is you.
Yes.
Okay. My answer to that is I don't want them as a client.
Okay.
No, I will say to them, if you keep pushing on me and just say, well, I don't want to hear all that. You just tell me what you can do, and I'll tell you if I want to do business or not. If I got something like, is that the type of demeanor you're talking about?
Very similar to that, and I can be very blunt about it, but yeah,
okay.
Very similar to that. Yeah.
Okay. So you hear something that sounds like that, where they're basically telling you this is how it's going to work, pal, or
right.
some version of that I'm the one in control here.
Right.
I'm going to say, you know what, Ahmad, I don't want to offend you. So tell me if I'm reading too much into this, but the approach you're giving me here sounds like basically, I'm supposed to jump and you'll let me know if it's high enough. Is that sort of the model that you use? And by the way, the people who use that model, they're going to say, that's right, I'm the buyer. They like that model. And I'm going to say, listen, I appreciate you sharing that with me. No disrespect intended. I'm going to remove myself from the conversation and the possibility. No disrespect intended, but that's not a client relationship I'm looking at. And customers who see us as a valued partner, who want us to be successful and recognize that we have their best interests in mind and see us as an equal. And that doesn't sound like the type of business relationships you like to form. So I don't think we fit together. I think we should probably stop right here.
Okay.
Now, how does he feel at that moment?
They get pissed off.
I'll tell you what, if you do it that way, I've had numerous of these. Pardon my language, folks, the guy feels like an asshole. Because that's what he's being. And I've had people stop and say, well, no, wait a minute. I'm not trying to be that tough. I just want to make sure that I get the information I need. Well, I appreciate that. And we can get there. But if that's the model you want to use for managing our relationship, that's not a relationship I'm looking for. And they will back down.
Okay.
Because they want what you have, especially if you have a good reputation. You just got to be in a polite, professional, adult way, be comfortable stating that that's not a relationship I'm open to entering.
What do you understand?
Okay, I'm going to stop. I've been talking and talking and talking. What questions does anybody have I can answer?
Well, I will go back to the question about identifying. I've been able to meet people usually right off the bat. And if they're a sales, I ask them, are you a salesperson or do you got sales experience? If they say yes, I go, then you need to know why I need to find out who the decision maker is. Is that really you?
Okay. I love and don't like some of the approach there. I love the directness and the fact that, the way you go about that. I might change the back end of it a little bit. That comes across as a little harsh, but I like the directness of the approach if they have some sales experience. In terms of getting to the decision maker, one of the questions I always ask, or would ask in some form, you got to find your own language for this, but it would be, hey Don, if your company was going to consider changing providers, and in this situation, I'm going to assume that there's another provider. If it's a brand new product, I would ask it that way. But it is, hey Don, when your company takes a look at an outside provider like us, if they were to choose to make a decision to switch providers and move to somebody like us, a big decision, who all besides yourself would be involved in that kind of a decision?
There you go. Yeah.
And if you ask who all besides yourself, instead of who makes it, it's who all besides yourself. It is assuming there's always a hidden decision maker, because there usually is. And if they stand firm, it's me. I'm going to ask a couple times. I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear I'm talking to the right person. Now, I work with a lot of companies. In a lot of cases, there's another department manager or another person in the company that will be affected by that decision. Is there any other managers you would want involved in this decision? Nope, just me. Okay, glad to hear it. No other directors that would have an input on how they would want it done? Nope, just me. Okay, I'm going to try them a couple of times gently, and then I'm going to ask, anybody got veto power?
Okay.
That's another good question. That's a money question. Does anybody have veto power? And by the way, if you're face to face, watch their eyes.
Yeah.
Does anybody have veto power? They look down and left. There's a hidden decision maker there somewhere.
Thank you.
That help?
Yes.
Okay. Always assume there's a hidden decision maker, because 90% of the time there are. We've lost some people, but there's still a few on here. Any questions? What can I help you with?
We've also had some chats, Dale, about people who had to leave at 11, but they did all say thank you, and that a few of them did want to have a follow-up. So we have gotten some feedback from people who had to drop out just because of other meetings.
I probably should have at least offered while everybody was online, and you're welcome to send it out if you want to send an email to everybody that attended. My cell phone is 916-307-7979. Again, 916-307-7979. If you are part of the WET Center and you call me up, I'm happy to spend, I don't always have a lot of time, but I always call you back, and I'm happy to give you some coaching time and help you with whatever I can in the short term. No charge. Okay, could somebody give me some feedback for my own edification as to the value of this session and anything I've covered? Has this been worthwhile?
It's been
Dave Miles, good one, good session, and I like the concepts first, and then the role play you did. Very informative. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you guys.
This is Mark from Biofiltro. I agree. I mean, this is probably one of the best webinars I've had in the last month.
Gratifying. Thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. Ahmad, you said it was what, different?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been on the other side like most of us to buy things as an engineer, and I just go to the core. Now I'm selling as an engineer, and I go to the core. And what you said about level playing field, I had more than once that experience, and I always treated the salespeople as a level person with me, always, because I got the most out of those type of interactions. I learned a lot, and I didn't waste anybody's time. I don't want my time to be wasted. So when I ask that, people really get pissed off.
That's because you're now a salesperson, not an engineer. Did you get anything out of this at all that was helpful to you?
Absolutely. It's been really good.
Good. Is there anything else anybody wants me to touch on before we get off of here?
Dale, when I first heard your thing, I had no sales experience at all. Well, just such a minimal bit. Now that I've had some, this has been very, very useful for me to
Okay. Don, I love that. So now that you spent some time out there dealing with prospects, you're seeing the application of this stuff.
Yes.
Love it.
It makes sense.
Love it. That's what when I found Sandler, I was highly resistant. Took me 6 months of rejecting it before I finally realized that I was the one missing it, because I thought I knew how sales worked. And the truth is, engineers love our stuff, because highly intelligent people who spend enough time with our material and then spend enough time out there with prospects, we get them all. They all come back, and it is the launch pad to sales success for them, because it helps them see a different mindset of how sales can operate. And so I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you very much.
I'm telling you, man, I'll still be your friend whether you buy something or not. Has gotten me further than anything else I've learned.
Love it. And again, if you're peer to peer, if I called Dan back after the one we just did, if I called that prospect back in 6 months, he's gonna say, yeah, I'm not gonna come in and try and pitch and convince him to buy. And any salesperson that thinks that's gonna stop me from getting his business, the opposite is true. The opposite is true. All right, let's.
Yeah, one question I want to leave on is, do you have, if the audience and for the recording component, if anyone wants to expand upon these subjects further through reading or other materials like that, what would you recommend?
Email Dale@Sandler.com. Dale@Sandler.com. Tell me that you're with the Wet Center, and I will send you a link to a free access to what we call the Learn Portal. It's our Sandler online learning portal. Now, you won't get all the content. You won't get all access to all of our training courses and all the stuff that we charge a lot of money for when I'm coaching clients. But you will. There is a whole database of videos and audio reinforcement of some of the concepts you're hearing here that I will give them access to.
Excellent. Thank you, Dale.
You're welcome. Should we end on that?
Yeah, I think I'll do a quick outro here.
Okay.
First and foremost, Dale, thanks for taking the time. I could tell for myself, at least, I know that I had a great learning experience with those concepts, and I think the rest of the audience could agree with that. Real quick, for next week's webinar, we'll be covering failure and prototyping for customer desire. We've got Lonnie Grafman of Humboldt State. He'll be sharing his experience building projects and products around the world. This will be a candid, live, and unrecorded discussion of his personal failures and how prototyping for desire is at least as important as prototyping for function. So make sure to come ready to challenge your assumptions, and we'll be looking forward to that discussion. So we'll end the note there, and we'll see you all next week.